Did you know that cults weren't always a bad thing? Hold on. My name is Freya Serafina. I'm a women's spirituality PhD student, an indie filmmaker, and an educator, and a couple of other things. And today I'm going to talk to you about mystery cults or goddess cults, what they were, and how that term cult has changed over time. Today, the term cult has very negative connotations, and for good reason. Dictionary.com gives us a few definitions of the word. I picked out a couple, such as a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing, a cult of personality surrounding the leaders, a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister, and a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. When we think of cults in modern times, we often think of people or organizations who cause immense mental, physical, and emotional harm. For example, the cult Angel's Landing was run for 15 years by Daniel Perez, who claimed to be a 1,000-year-old angel that led traveling bands of women from state to state. On top of that, he told his followers that in order to live, he needed young girls. Big creep energy. On top of that, he stole millions of dollars from his followers after they died from their life insurance policies. Good guy. Also, there was a cult called Heaven's Gate, run by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles in the early 70s. These two cult leaders renamed themselves Bo and Peep, like Little Bo Peep. Really creepy. They convinced their followers that the earth was dying and that they had to leave it before it did, which resulted in the death of 42 people. There are many other stories, groups, people, religious organizations that I could talk about, unfortunately, but I think you get the point. Modern day cults do exist, and they can be literal hell for the people living in them. They can be as big as Heaven's Gate or as small as fans of pop stars who attack other people in the comments section for disagreeing with them. Cultic behavior, like online or in person bullying, can also lead people to cause great harm towards others and towards themselves. And that's just as dangerous as a group of people living off on a commune somewhere, completely isolated from the rest of the world. And I want to be very clear. I do not wish to minimize the experience of anyone watching this video who has unfortunately found themselves involved in a cult. The purpose of this video is to cast our minds back thousands of years to think about the origins of this term that we now use, cult, and what it meant for the people then. I hope you can have an open mind and follow me on that journey. There's actually been a ton of research around the word cult and how that term has changed throughout history. Ernst Peter Wilhelm Troeltsch, I hope I said his name right, was a German liberal Protestant theologian, a writer on the philosophy of religion and the philosophy of history, and a classical liberal politician. He's often credited with defining the term cult in 1931 when talking about Western religious rituals and traditions. So what's a mystery cult? A mystery cult was a group of people who often centered a specific deity around their worship. This worship often satisfied individualistic and personal ideas about death, the afterlife, and rebirth. Many times the mystery cult was based on a specific sacred story, and usually included the reenactment of a death and rebirth cycle for a particular god or goddess. We call them mystery cults because only initiates knew what truly took place within the temple walls and celebratory rites. However, there often was a public component that townspeople and villagers could participate in, but the sacred rites and rituals were kept secret. One of the more popular and well-known rituals and mystery cults were the Greek Eleusinian mysteries and the cultic rituals that took place around the goddess Demeter and her daughter Persephone, or Kore. People came from all over Greece for a 9-day festival. These 9 days reenacted the amount of time that Demeter searched for her daughter Persephone and mourned her absence from the realm of the living. Demeter, who's struck with grief over her daughter's absence, refuses to allow grain to grow and starves mortals until Persephone returns from the land of the dead. However, Persephone wishes to return to the land of the dead so that she can guide dead souls peacefully into the underworld. Oh, and if this story sounds a little different than the one you've been told, it's because you've been told the wrong one. But that'll be a different video. Because Persephone decides to split her time between the underworld and the realm of the living, we get the seasons and the harvest. And the culmination of the celebratory rites ends in a reenactment of Persephone's rebirth. As I mentioned before, some portion of the festival was public. People would sing and dance and feast, and there would be a theatrical reenactment of sorts. But what initiates did within the inner sanctum is still a mystery to us. Hence, mystery cult. Writer and researcher Mary Naples tells us that in Greek, an initiate is called mystes, and the accompanying initiation ritual is called mysteria. Hence, the mysteries were a secret cult whose participation was restricted to its initiates, wherein initiation ceremonies may have played a key role in the sacred rituals. Although shrouded in secrecy, archaeological evidence has yielded artifacts from the cults, including the Great Hall of the Initiation called the Telesterion at Ulysses, which was large enough to have contained thousands of initiates. Because mystery cults were often centered around the retelling of death and birth cycles, I would argue that the followers of Osiris were also in a mystery cult. The first evidence of Osiris worship can be traced back to 5th dynasty Egypt. Osiris was both a fertility god and a god of the underworld, which fits the bill for birth, death, and rebirth. According to Greek author Plutarch, Osiris was slain and his body was torn into 14 pieces. Eventually, Isis, his wife, found all the 14 pieces, buried his body, well, the pieces, except the phallus, and because of that, he was able to be reborn as the king of the underworld. But just because he was king of the underworld doesn't mean that he lost all of his regenerative powers. Instead, everything sprung forth from Osiris. It's a really nice reminder that death is often necessary in order for new life to grow. And it soon became the belief that if you followed Osiris, you too could be reborn. This sounds like another story I know. In the Middle Kingdom, festivals dedicated to Osiris were celebrated by way of a public festival and nocturnal rites. This took place at Abydos, and public participation was permitted. There is something known as the Abydos Passion Plays, which reenact the death and rebirth cycle of Osiris. There are also various accounts that state that there were very real ritual killings involved in the Passion Play to Osiris. These initiates would probably be expecting to enter the great mystery of death and the underworld by way of their ritual sacrifice. But Freya, if these cults were also killing people, aren't they just as bad as today's cults? Maybe, but I don't wholly think so. I guess you can make that argument if we had proof that every single cult participated in ritual killing, which we don't. And I hesitate to accept the proof we do have. It's common knowledge that many writers who are outside of the culture or the religion they're writing about are writing with the hope of demonizing that particular culture, people, religion, and practice. And this happened very often, especially with pagan cultures of any kind. So yeah, we have historical texts from outsiders, we have archaeological evidence, and we have some religious writing left over. But the whole point of it being a mystery cult is that most elements are still shrouded in mystery. We just don't know. What we do know is this: cults were centered on religious worship to a particular deity or deities, and involved a festival and ritual of some kind. What we don't know if ritualistic killing actually took place or if it was more symbolic in nature. And given that most writings from outside the culture were meant to discredit the culture they were writing about, I would hesitate to accept everything I read as truth, but it would also be irresponsible to completely dismiss it altogether. Do I believe we can enter the mysteries and initiate ourselves in modern times? Yes. Have I done it? Also yes. And you can too. I'll be starting a course on that soon, but in the meantime, tell me what you think. Can we actually use the word cult in modern times without all of this negative connotation that's associated with it? Should we work to reclaim the word cult within pagan and other religious and spiritual traditions? Or should we think of something new? I don't see most pagan practitioners or goddess spirituality practitioners using the word cult whatsoever. And I think that that is because of its modern and social connotations. I think if myself, for example, if I were to say, let's start a cult to the goddess Newt, people might think I'm a little bit crazy or scary, or I was trying to take advantage of them in some way or harm them in some way, or I was just doing some shady shit. But I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and put your notifications on, because another one will be coming up soon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.